Hello, everyone, and welcome to Smart Sex, Smart Love. I'm Dr. Joe Kort, and today we're going to be joined with my guest, Master Arch, who's a fetish worker, pro-dom, fetish creator, death escort, and financial fetishist. He's actually been on before. He's a returning guest. Master Arch first joined me several years ago for a conversation that challenged people's assumptions about fetish, financial domination, emotional power exchange, and what people are actually seeking in underneath taboo desires. Since then, conversations around kink, online sexuality, masculinity, loneliness, and emotional vulnerability have become much more mainstream, but in many ways also more misunderstood. Throughout his work, Master Arch explores the emotional and psychological side of fetish culture, including shame, identity, emotional masochism, power dynamics, masculinity, and the ways people use erotic experiences to process feelings they often cannot express anywhere else. Today, we're going deeper into the psychology behind the fetish, how internet culture has changed intimacy and domination, and some people eroticize emotional suffering, and what these dynamics reveal about human connection, vulnerability, and desire. Welcome back, Mr. Arch.
Thanks, Doc. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you back.
Thank you.
All right. So let's just go right into the questions. It's been a few years, obviously, since our first conversation. What feels most different to you now, both personally and within the fetish culture itself?
I think personally, it's been a lot of talking to people. I've really talked to a lot of people about a lot of different things, and it just really shows me the variety of kinks and fetishes that are out there. I'm always surprised by new things that I haven't heard before, and within the fetish culture itself, what I do is a very niche part of fetish culture. In the world of fetish, financial domination and emotional sadism and masochism is a very small part of it. But I think that more and more talk with a lot of people, the emotional aspect, although it isn't sadist masochist, it's always going to be there with kink. I think there's always going to be an emotional element to that as
Right.
we
The power exchange.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When we first talked, we focused a lot on financial domination, but now you seem more focused on the emotional and psychological side of the work. What's changed?
Well, I think that, like I said, FinDom is just one small segment of the fetish world. And within the fetish world, there's so many different expressions of power exchange. It can be Dom sub, it can be sadist masochist, it can be master slave. There's lots of different iterations of what it can show up as. And I think that with the emotional, psychological stuff, it really appeals to me more because it's a deeper connection with a person. It's a entering into the brain rather than the body. It's more of a intimate setting between two people. And I think once you share feelings with someone, there's a connection that's made that isn't necessarily made anywhere else that I've seen, But like I said, as I've done more research on the psychological parts of this, it seems like that emotional tinge cuts into every aspect of BDSM.
Mm-hmm.
It's all encompassing. It's one of the sensations that I think a lot of people are chasing and feeling.
Right, because I think financial domination is newer, right? It hasn't always been around. It hasn't been called that, but it's sprung out of the BDSM culture, right?
I'm from what I can tell in the history that I've looked at, that yeah, most of it has been done by dominatrixes for years and years and years. And I think the sole act of giving money is submission, um, and nothing else. That's relatively new. I think that's come more with the internet and the advent of the internet, and more with payment platforms where people can send money and transfer money between each other.
Yeah. You use the term emotional masochism a lot. What exactly do you mean when you use that term?
So we can break that down into two words. Masochism is people that enjoy being hurt to one degree or another. For one reason or another, there are people that do take pleasure from pain. And I think that when you think of traditional sadism and masochism, you think of kind of like the dungeon master coming into the dungeon with his whips and his floggers and his paddles. This is more, instead of whips and chains and paddles, we're using things like shame, guilt, remorse, regret, different things to inflict that, to bring that to the surface. Because in the dungeon, when you're using your tools physically, those are for impact. Those are for things that bring all the pain to the surface, bring welts to the surface, bring bruises to the surface, actual trials and tribulations, and trials by fire in some degree. But I think that with emotional sadism and masochism, you really have a roundhouse of toys that you can use to bring that same effect and have that same subspace achieved, whether you're physically impacting them or emotionally impacting them as well.
Do you have an example?
I think that in my experience, most of the examples that I can give are cuckolds. Um, People that fetishize cheating, fetishizing real infidelity and having their hearts broken over and over and over again. But at the end of it, the partner that's cheating comes back to that partner, and they come back to each other, and they both kind of revel in the fact that it's their relationship, and these are just extra people used to kind of hurt the feelings of the cuckold and kind of rub it in his face that he's insignificant, insecure, inadequate, all these things that you can fetishize and kind of use to kind of jab at the person and kind of add a little more pain to the scene that you're doing.
I want to insert this because I know people listening who aren't familiar with all this may be hearing, why would somebody want welts and bruises and emotional pain? And people don't understand, and maybe you can explain it a little too, is that people eroticize this. This is play. That's why they call it play, BDSM play, FinDom play, power exchange play. People are, it's in some ways, it's healing and therapeutic to have this exchange differently than maybe coming to me as a therapist. We're just talking this through. There's no sexuality between us, but sexuality has its own form of healing. Would you agree?
I would not I would be really, really it would be really important for me to say that kink is not a replacement for therapy.
Right.
It is a therapeutic approach that can have the same results as therapy because you have breakthroughs, you have, processing, you have childhood stuff. I mean, it's very therapeutic, but to say that it is a replacement for therapy is not something I'm advocating for here. I
Right.
think that any well-rounded kinkster should probably have a lot of therapy under their belt to kind of have an idea of why they're going after this, what they're hoping to achieve from this, and why they continue to come back to this.
And a lot of people engage in what we call in our field trauma reenactment. And I do a lot of work and writing and talking about how doing it as a trauma reenactment is not the healing. You can go from trauma reenactment to trauma play, playing with the trauma that happened to you, but that often does involve therapy.
Right, and I think that the people that are doing that do have an emotional side to them that they are trying to feel something again. The roots of BDSM is sensation, whether it's
Yes.
being tickled with a feather or slapped with a flogger, whatever it is, there's a sensation associated with it. So I think that in the end, the sensations that people are trying to feel, the feelings that they're trying to feel, it's such a broad range. And when we say again, emotional masochists, these are people that really want their emotions weaponized against them to some degree. And I'm putting that all in air quotes because it's nefarious to the point that you've negotiated ahead of time, you've given the information to the person, and they're using it against you in the scene. And it's
Right.
a container. It's a place where it's safe to unload this, safe to experience this, safe to experience this with someone else, and safe to process this with someone else.
And consensual.
Right. And this is why it's very important to vet people that you're playing with and kind of
Mm.
get a background of like who they are as people, what their background looks like, what their experiences are, how much time they've spent in the dungeon, how much time they've actually seen power exchange in their real life, and privately as well.
Earlier you said something that made me think if somebody's listening to this, they may have a problem. I always talk about how kink is a lot of my clients or people that I know that do this. It's very transactional. It's not necessarily, it can be an emotional connection. to the person, but it's often not. It's just like I'm my play partner. But earlier you said something about an emotional connection. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I think that the emotional connection that comes with this, like, even if it's transactional, I mean, you're still when you vet these people and when you negotiate with these people, at least for me, the big questions are, what are we trying to get from this? What are we trying to achieve from this? And I think that that right there, it's so unique to the person. There's
Mhm,
so many different answers that I've gotten. There's so many different expressions of this that I've seen that I think in the end of it, it can be transactional, but it can also be quite emotionally freeing,
mm, yeah,
because
yes,
it just you're releasing yourself to giving someone your deepest, darkest secrets and then having them use it against you, you
mhm,
know? That can't be really done casually. You can't really do that in a pickup play situation? And as far as any type of play that requires this level of intimacy and this level of emotions, aftercare is super important.
mhm,
It's really important for us to like put people back together before we send them back
mm.
out into the world.
I
And
don't
that's something that's really you can't do casually. You can't just you know, do it and leave.
I don't think a lot of people know about aftercare. I'm glad you brought that up, that afterwards people do have a reconnection with each other so that you make sure they're not leaving, realistically debased.
Right. And I think that that looks different for everyone. And I think that when you talk about the differences between men and women, when you do BDSM with the different genders like that, men tend to brush it off and just kind of like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm good. And women are more like, no, I need blankets. I need hugs. I need cuddles. I need physical, like, being put back in my body and stuff like
Mm,
that. I think there's a lot we can learn from each other just back and forth and what aftercare is for bottoms and also the tops in this. There's aftercare that DOMs need as well, and the
mm,
money doesn't cover that.
mm,
In the FinDom, the money doesn't count as aftercare at all. It has to come from a place of genuine care. It has to come from a place of service. It has to come from a place of respect and a place of just really caring about the person enough to like, are you okay?
mm.
That's a big thing, and asking somebody that and acknowledging that they might not be okay, and sometimes it's okay not to be okay after that.
A lot of people would ask, and I realize as we're talking, I speak a lot about the person who is more submissive and more who gets into it, then hires the dom and is the fin sub, wanting to spend the money. What do you get out of it as the dom? What do you enjoy?
Well, I think that I talked about this a little bit in the last podcast too. The humanity, just the real humanity, and really hearing the personal experiences of everybody and how we're all connected by trauma and experiences that have kind of molded us. That if you're willing to take this step and wanting to fetishize that, wanting to give that to somebody else, there's real respect
Mm.
that comes with that. Even if it's a self-loathing personality that doesn't really feel worthy enough of respect, there is a certain amount that comes with being able to acknowledge and really talk about the things that turn you on and, you know, make your life worth living in that respect.
I love that. I'm glad you share that, and because it's a responsibility and respect you have for the people you do this with.
Mhm. Absolutely.
How do you feel social media and the internet culture has changed fetish psychologically?
Well, I mean, I think that social media has definitely given the opportunity for more people to hear about this. And then I think the last time we talked, when did we talk last? Had COVID happened?
I
I
don't
don't remember.
remember.
I don't either. But since that, like, COVID really changed a lot for a lot of people. It put people in their houses. It made people really looking for connection. It
Mm,
made people really have a lot of disposable income that they otherwise wouldn't have because they weren't going to their jobs, but they were getting paid. And I think that during that time, OnlyFans just took off.
mm,
And I think a lot of people heard about financial domination and kind of misconstrued it because now within social media, we kind of have an influx of these influencer DOMs that have come in and they're so used to being influencers that they don't really have the basic knowledge of power exchange.
oh,
It's not a real it's not a real smooth process. It's more you go into these spaces on Twitter and such, and it's like they're talking and they're just like, okay, send me $20 and I'll send you a picture set. And it's like, that's a transactional approach. That's
Right.
not the domination and submission, the fetish, the kink, the real core things that I started this on and extensions of have really been lost. Like everybody's giving everybody info on how to financially dominate, but nobody's really saying like you need to go to the dungeons, you need to go to the BDSM groups locally to your community and see what this looks like. See what power exchange looks like.
Mhm.
Talk to your BDSM elders, talk to the people that were in leather, talk to the people that were involved in like the other iterations of this before social media, and you're going to see that it's completely different. It's completely different.
I think it takes a lot of intelligence on both sides for the dom and the sub. I think it's an art, it's a craft, it's for a sapiosexual, it can be that can be part of what's so erotic about it.
It does, but I think, like I said, there's a whole new generation of influencer doms and muscle boys that have kind of come on the scene and just like it's kind of a cash grab. Some of these live spaces that I've been in, it reminds me of a Jerry Lewis telethon. It's just like, how much do we have on the board? How much are we trying to make? How much,
Oh
like we
my
got another
god.
caller. Someone's calling in from Chicago. What does Chicago have? Chicago has $20 on the board. It really seems like a cash grab, and it's lost all essence of kink. Like there's nothing there. It's just been whittled down so small that it doesn't take a genius to count from 1 to 10.
Right.
It doesn't
Which
take a genius to like say give me money.
right.
I've found that Twitter has kind of just really diminished what it really started as for me, and it's become something a lot bigger than me in the
Mhm.
end. And I try to really watch who I associate with, because there's the younger ones that are coming onto the scene. I feel inclined to teach more and given a real world approach to it and be like, okay, this is the legal ramifications of what you're doing. You need to be aware of this. Even if you're not going to obey that, you have to play with risk aware. You have to know the risk and be aware of the risk that you're playing with, which is
Mhm.
within BDSM. That is something that, safe, sane, and consensual. Yes. But also risk aware kink is practiced with a lot of people where it's like, we acknowledge what we're doing is risky. We acknowledge what we're doing is dangerous, and we acknowledge what we're doing is damaging to people. So, getting someone's intent as well as their consent is just as important. If you're going to
Mm.
talk to someone and say, I'm going to do X, Y, Z to you, and they're saying, I like X and Y, but Z, I'm not so sure about, it's like, okay, well, let's do X and Y and a little bit of Z, see how you feel about that. If you don't like that, we can safe word it Z, go back to X, Y, what you're used to, what you're comfortable with. That level of negotiation isn't even happening. It's
Mm.
assuming that anybody coming into the room, anybody coming into the chat, because they're there, they're into FinDom, they're there for the taking, they're there for the using, they're there for it gets really convoluted really fast.
So how does your room is it different on Twitter when you go into these spaces?
Sometimes like I said, sometimes it's a Jerry Lewis telethon. Sometimes it's more just really talking and having a deeper conversation with people that aren't afraid to get on mic and just talk about their fetishes and kinks and how this affects them and how this, molds them.
Mhm.
It's an anonymous place where they can kind of be themselves. And I think that those are the places where, the psychology of it really comes out, because people are so there are no inhibitions. I mean, it
Mm.
just we're all usernames. We're all just voices. So we don't know these people in real life. The anonymity factor is quite high. So there is a real sense of vulnerability in people that are coming in. Most of the spaces that I do, I try to limit it to certain topics, certain aspects of this that appeal to me. I do a lot of hypnosis. I do a lot of processing of religious trauma through Satanism. I do a lot of just really taboo things that people don't really talk about. And I think there's a real lack of within the BDSM scene itself. and the FinDom scene. I don't think a lot of people are talking about that. Like I said, the influx of all these people coming from OnlyFans and just getting thousands and thousands of
Mm,
subscribers and being told they're pretty, being told their muscles are big, and being told their, packages are big or whatever it is. It just, that's nice. And like, it's nice to tribute to that. It's nice to show respect and worship to that. But what you're doing is not any form of power exchange. And it really needs to be separated as such.
mm. That's why I like talking to you so much. You're very smart about this. You really use your mind, and you humanize the experience. It's not just taking advantage of people. And one thing you say is that you said domination is different from controlling passive people. What do you mean by that?
Well, dominance and submission is more people coming with identity of dominance and submission, and knowing that you're a more take charge person and you can order somebody to do something. And on the other end of the thing, it might be somebody who's in a lot of control in their life and a lot of powerful situations and needs to relinquish that in their private life, you
Mhm,
know? But passive people are not the same as submissive people. There's a certain energy signature that comes with submission, and if you know it, you know it. I
mhm,
don't know how to explain it to like the norm, but eh, it's not it's it's not something that I can easily describe. Passivity is more just like you can do whatever you want to me. You can just, like it's more an attitude. It's not an identity. It's just
mm,
more attitude around things, and being able to break free from the passive attitude and kind of find yourself as a submissive is a wonderful thing. And it
mm.
takes a real skilled person to be able to differentiate between the two and also acknowledge the two and say, hey, I like when you do this, but I don't like when you do this,
Mm.
you know?
What do you, what do you make about the whole growth of consensual non-consent? Young people call it CNC. What do
Young
you
people
say
call
about that?
it PNC. Yeah, the kids these days, they're calling it.
Yes.
Yeah.
They always
Um,
want me to talk about it. I'm not going to talk. I mean, I have a lot to say, but I can't talk about it on social media. I'll get, my videos will get taken down.
Yeah, I think CNC is something that it can take many forms. It's another one of those things that it's like once you dive into that darker realm of BDSM and things like CNC, even that has to be negotiated. That's not what anybody's saying or talking about. They love to use edgy titles for things and kind of like fetishize it. And like Twitter's been good for that. Twitter has been a real hub for people talking about that, but also just putting up false information about it and
Mm,
what it is and what it isn't, because anybody can put a picture up and put a caption on it that makes you feel a certain type of way about it,
mhm.
you know? And with CNC, like you can watch a video and you don't know if it's consensual. You don't know unless it's paid porn actors, you don't know if it's consensual or you're not. You don't know if you're watching revenge porn. You don't know anything about that. And that's why a lot of these states right now, like Texas and Arkansas, and like these places are actually doing porn bans because there's so much of an influx of porn being uploaded to these tube sites that nobody's checking IDs at the door to see if anybody's 18 years or older. Nobody's checking if everybody is cool with what's going on. And nobody's checking whether anybody has permission to post it anywhere.
Mhm,
So true CNC is I can do what I want to when I want to.
mhm.
And it usually comes within a very trusting relationship, that's vetted, that's understood that this is what we're doing. But as far as what people's impression of it is, I mean, that's so many different things for so many different people.
What do you do when somebody wants you to go too far for you?
I mean, the things that I do are generally too far for a lot of people. A
So you're
lot of
willing to, mhm,
I mean, I'm willing to go to a certain degree. There's certain things I don't want to have anything to do with. I don't think anything is worth catching a charge over. I
mhm,
don't think there I think there's a lot of people probably fueled by poppers and meth that those are things that both take someone to their lowest level
mhm,
as far as depravity, as far as, just being able to vocalize the taboos that they're into, and it kind of burns out the endorphins. From what I know about these things, it burns out the endorphins, so, like, you don't really get the same charge from, like, vanilla things, and it's like the escalation is necessary to kinda feel something with that. So there's a connection there. I don't know what it is because 'cause I'm not a drug counselor, I don't know, but I know that very popular right now. People are really into poppers. People are really into having someone control their popper use and someone control their drug use. And I think that there's, again, when you recognize and acknowledge the risks that you play with that, within scene, it can be fun, it can be exciting, but with every space you go in and somebody is just counting people down on poppers, not really understanding the, you know, psychology behind what they're doing to the brain, what they're doing to the reward centers of the brain. I mean, it's really, it's kind of a crapshoot. It's kind of,
And
you know,
yeah, no, I have noticed an increase of popper use, and especially in this scene kind of thing. And it's shocking actually that it's become so big. It's like just keeps growing.
yeah. And it gets to be a problem because in the end of it, a lot of these payment processors put it in the terms of service that no payments under duress are allowed. And that would fall underneath that. That would
Mhm,
definitely fall underneath that. So, again, acknowledging the risk that you're playing with that and doing that. A lot of sites won't allow that or any mention of forced intoxication on their terms of service because it is a violation.
have you ever thought of like doing a training, like maybe a program for people that want to get into this? And
I did a short, I don't know what it would be called, like a Zoom thing about the ethics of unethical financial domination, where I kind of gave the ins and outs of what we're doing and just the risk aware that you play with within this. Not many people showed up.
mm,
There is a very severe lack, and I'm going to use this term because I play more on the male side of things. There's a severe lack of brotherhood. There's a severe lack of like people sharing information within each other. And it's like, just because you have 30,000 followers doesn't mean you know what you're doing.
right,
You
right.
know, I mean, it just, and I think that when I go into other people's spaces, unless they know who I am or they do their research on who I am, they just kick me out.
Hmm,
They'll
hmm.
just, they see it as competition. There are a number of these alphas that are like going into people's spaces to poach, to go in and like see that if a sub is draining in a space or talking in a space, that they'll hit them up privately and try to get them as their own.
Wow.
It's a real shame, and it takes, again, a certain level of community and brotherhood for the subs to like mention in the room like, hey, master X, Y, and Z is in my DMs. I just need you to know that although this is your space, there are other masters in the space that are looking to take this over.
Hmm.
And I would hope that the masters and the alphas that come into my spaces are learning something, because it just, there's so much that needs to be learned. There's so much that needs to be talked about. And it doesn't make you any less dominant asking another dominant a question or getting mentorship or understanding how this works, and leather, the true dominants were the people that had been through this themselves, that had actually had the whips used on them, actually had gone through the trials and tribulations, because leather culture was very rooted in biker culture, and there was a certain amount of initiation that came with that. So I think that that's been lost. I think that that's been
Yeah.
kind of put by the wayside, which is a shame.
What keeps you in this? What do you love about it?
Again, I think the humanity of it, and just, I love hearing about people's kinky, fucked up fetishes. I love just hearing the vulnerability in their voice when they talk to me about it, hearing the trembling in their voice, hearing the apprehension in their voice when they're admitting this, because I've said this before, and I don't know if it was on your podcast. The number one Family Feud answer that I hear from every single client that I have is, I can't even tell my therapist about this. So it just like, okay, well, why wouldn't you? Is it because you're afraid of being judged? Is it because you're afraid that they're going to think you're a certain type of person? And I think that within kink, again, there are taboos. There are things that we don't really talk about with other people, even within the community. I think there are people that on the surface appear to be very with it and in line with everything kink related, but behind closed doors, there's a secret side that they don't even share, and it really is a shame. It's a public health crisis in a lot of ways because people aren't talking about this with therapists. People aren't educating therapists on how to treat this or how to talk about this or how to understand this a little better. And I mean, there's been progress made since I talked to you last. Tasha's been doing an amazing job of educating people on different types of kinks and educating mental health professionals on kinks as well. So
Yes.
they're a little bit more knowledgeable about these types of things, and they're very lucky to be getting their information directly from kinksters.
Yeah, I'm
So
so glad you know about Tashra. Do you know what it stands for? I always forget.
I do not,
I forget too, and here we are shouting out to them. And
but it's a
um,
wonderful organization.
oh,
And I can't shout their praises enough because it really does give BDSM practitioners the opportunity to interact with mental health professionals and not be judged for what we do and really come to a place of curiosity rather than judgment with it.
and it's research based. It's Tashra. So just so people know, you can look it up, TASHRA.org. Okay, so one last question, and that would be, what did we not talk about that you want to make sure listeners hear from you and your work?
I don't think there's much except that, again, like, do your research on the people you're playing with. That's something I want to tell to everybody. Just really make sure the people that you're playing with are vetted. Make sure the people that you're playing with have some knowledge of what they're doing. It may be hot to serve somebody who is attractive to you or better than you in one way, shape, or form. But I think that, again, it doesn't make you any less submissive to ask for references. It
Mm,
doesn't make you any less dominant to employ a mentor to kind of guide you through these things because a lot of these guys are really, really young. And I don't think they're doing the research. And I think the research they're getting and the information they're getting is such a vacuum of social media, of TikTok and
hmm
Twitter and all these places. But nobody, again, there's no sense of brotherhood and nobody is really talking to each other. There's no real forum where we're all coming together and having the big discussion about what we're learning about people, what we're noticing about people, and what people are asking for more than anything.
mm.
The
Thank,
trends.
yeah, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
At all for arch, capital ALLFOR, capital ARCH on Twitter is the best way. At Elemental Kink on Instagram. Those are the two places I generally handle DMs. I'm not
All
on
right.
fans. I'm not on any of the bigger platforms because it's too much of a time suck. There's
hmm
way too much, and I can't provide content fast enough for those people.
Oh, good. Right. I know you're very deliberate, very intentional, and it's always, always a pleasure to have you on. I'm so glad I brought you back, Master Arch. It's a pleasure having you back on my show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So those of you that, if you enjoyed this podcast, please like and follow me. And it's smartsexsmartlove.com. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, all the places that have different podcasts. And you can also follow me at Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Oh, I said that already. At Dr. Joe Kort, DrJoeKort. Until next time, everybody, stay safe and stay healthy.